Welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Rook along with Allison Thompson with the Money Farm. We are seeing mostly lower prices in the grains. We're mixed in livestock with cattle setting back, hogs to the plus side for the most part. And let's talk about the grain market first of all, Allison. It looks like maybe a little bit better weather forecast kind of pressing the market. And then we ran up into some major chart resistance yesterday too, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's probably a combination of both. But first and foremost, obviously, is the weather. You could tell by looking at the screen this morning when I woke up that it was red. Obviously, we had a weather forecast change on the overnight. So that's a lot of the movement that we're seeing today. And on top of that, yes, we did hit some pretty key technical levels yesterday, unable to trade through them. So we are seeing a bit of a technical pullback as well. But again, weather forecasts are definitely going to trump a lot of other headlines at the moment. The new models on the overnight are looking for an inch or more of some beneficial rain across parts of the Corn Belt. But obviously, we came off of lows here mid morning. The trade's obviously lacking some confidence in those models. And if history is any indication of repeating itself, I'd say chances of those rains being spotty are probably a little bit better. So it's going to continue to be a battle of the haves and have nots and how that's going to equate to production in the end. But ultimately, we're coming close to a period here where we're going to have the crop demanding rain on a consistent basis. And if we're not able to see that weather pattern develop, it's obviously going to add to concerns. So seeing these forecasts here for the next 10 to 14 days are that's the main reason why the market's paying attention to them so much.
Yeah. And we didn't have a whole lot of weather premium in the market before these weather concerns kind of started, did we?
No, I agree. I don't think there was much weather premium. Again, we were talking about big crops in South America, which are still there. We're on competitive on the global market for a lot of our crops. So yeah, that's what we were trading. That was the bottom, right? So now we're seeing a new production scare here. So it's kind of weighing it out right now. So that'll make these USD reports coming up in a couple weeks kind of key. What are we going to be trading? Is it going to be production or is it going to be weather? And how that weighs out here going forward on our balance sheets.
Yeah. Of course, those end of the month reports are always critical and widely watched, but if it stays dry, it could get pretty explosive, especially as we go into that July 4th time period, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the key reproductive stages, and we start hitting those. And again, this weather shift is supposed to happen here right around the summer solstice, which is next Monday or next Wednesday. Excuse me. So if we're not seeing a pattern shift, I mean, it kind of lays out what we could be in for here the rest of the summer. And of course, we're going into a 3-day weekend here with markets being closed next Monday. So it could add some volatility here just going into the weekend because we are going to be sitting at some pretty critical times here for some weather forecast development.
You bet. And watching the weather over the weekend for sure. So, the wheat market, are we just following corn and soybeans, or is that a little early harvest pressure? Or is this just these world or global markets? I know the EU wheat prices just continue to tumble here, don't they?
Yeah, and honestly, wheat's been the leader to the downside, especially in Chicago and KC wheat. And I do think it's going to be those overseas markets that are the main factor here. Obviously, Russia remains competitive on their export prices, but it's going to be hard for the U.S. to bottom here on our markets if we're not seeing those overseas markets do the same. So if they're continuing lower and they're obviously more competitive than us, it's going to be hard for us to really gain some momentum to the upside. On the other hand, we are seeing Minneapolis wheat really hold on a lot better than KC and Chicago today. And that might be starting to trade some of its own fundamentals and crop conditions as well. Obviously, the heart of the Corn Belt's getting the major headlines, but up here, our spring wheat areas have been hit with drought as well, and some excessive heat for starting out the crop. And the crop didn't like that. So a lot of the crop is stunted. We're seeing, anywhere to 6 to 10 inches, and some is actually starting to head out, and it's only mid-June. So there's definitely some concern there. It's spotty though, just like we've seen rains go through the Corn Belt. It's in spotty areas, but it definitely leads to concern when the trade's already talking about having smaller acres of spring wheat this year anyway. So it looks like the crop's getting smaller, not bigger here from where I'm at.
Yeah. It doesn't feel like the spring wheat market especially has been I guess, respecting how small this crop and this acreage is. So,
yeah, it's frustrating, but that's
yeah,
kind of
no
the
doubt.
way that market goes.
You bet. Of course, we're watching outside markets. We had PPI out this morning, CPI yesterday, and the Fed is going to give us an announcement here at 1 o'clock today. But I think most are in the camp that it's going to be basically steady. They're not going to do any change on
Correct.
interest
Yeah,
rates.
the expectation is that we'll see a pause here on interest rates. Doesn't mean that they won't restart them again. And I think that's why they're calling it just a pause this time, because who knows what will happen in the coming months. But yeah, widely expected that it will be a pause. But either way, we are seeing mixed outside markets. Crude's also down a little bit here this morning as well. EIA did show some inventory builds there too, so that could also be pressuring some of our biofuel markets as well.
Absolutely. And the cattle market, we've kind of been in consolidation mode here off of the big key reversals that you and I talked about last week. Will we continue to correct in the cattle market? And are we also seeing some spread unwinding with hogs?
Yeah, I think there's definitely some spread unwinding present today too. But yeah, it's been kind of lacking to get the momentum back going higher. But we do have the bullish fundamentals behind it to support a move higher again. But seeing some consolidation, some back and forth here, trading sideways is not surprising. We see it in grains as well. So yeah, I have a feeling that it may be just pausing here before it decides when are we going to start seeing a correction um, going forward, whether that's going to be higher or lower. I'd expect to see it break out one way or the other.
Yeah, we were definitely overdue for a correction here, though, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. After making new highs, definitely due for a pullback. And actually, when you think about it, it's probably not that sizable at this point. We've been able to hold on pretty well to those bottoms, but until we see that reversal lower negated, it could definitely continue in the lower trend.
Absolutely. And maybe a little healthy here overall in the scheme of things. All right. Thanks for joining us, Allison Thompson with the Money Farm. That's Markets Now.